completed their studies and gone out into the world. It's wonderful. So what I've written, I hope it's all right. It's about Australia and Avatar's abode and Maya House, Sydney, and of course, Barbara coming, Barbara being here. And but in a way, for myself, it applies. I think of so many. It's not just Australia, but I hope it applies to everyone that happens to be listening. Wonderful other countless episodes in the life of the Avatar, endless springs of light and fragrance, and wonderful the countless incidents of sacrifice and love undertaken by his lovers. According to the period and circumstances, the lovers of God are proved on a battlefield, sometimes a real battlefield, handful against hordes. Sometimes, as in this Advent, proved in their willingness to sacrifice a life of worldly intoxication for a life in pursuit of love and truth and of service in his cause. Beautiful indeed are the stories of love that arise during the life of Avatar. Stories made more poignant in that he, as author, is present to witness and praise his own awakening in the hearts of his lovers. Two such episodes were the visits of Mayor Baba to Australia. He came in 1956 and 1958 for 5 days on each occasion, but in his own inexplicable way, he had laid cables to Australia through his disciples in the 1930s. And when an Australian in 1954 asked him to come, Mayor Baba said, "Do you think I'm not already there?" Personally, physically, he came twice, quietly, seeking no publicity, and saying to the handful of Australians who bowed their heads before his divinity, "I have come to sow the seed of love in your hearts, so that in spite of all superficial diversity, which you in your life in illusion must experience and endure, the feeling of oneness through love is brought about amongst all nations, creeds, sects and castes of the world." Mayor Barber's first visit to Australia in 1956 seemed in retrospect a preparation for his second and last visit in 1958. He was, in 1956, more often informal and gently mischievous. He played marbles with the older boys and simple ball games and sleight of hand tricks with the younger children. He took us to the movies, even though we only stayed 20 minutes or so. And his discourses were punctuated with delightful mind and down-to-earth examples from everyday life. It was as though he took note of our immaturity and became the gentle moon to our seeking hearts. But in 1958, he became the sun to that germinating seed of love and brought home to us that love for him was obeying him and pleasing him in the manner of our life. He came in June 1958. Avatar Maya Baba and 4 disciples arrived at Sydney Airport on June 2nd and was then escorted to Brisbane Airport, Queensland. It was late evening when the plane landed, and the still, cool evening seemed like the hush before the master singer makes his appearance on the stage. All that had to be done was done, and the audience would receive according to their preparedness. Baba descended and walked slowly across the tarmac, steadied by the ever-near, ever-watchful Erich. Even through the dim light, the mind was immediately aware of an immensity of suffering beyond reasoning comprehension. Again and again throughout the following days, the mind was thus confronted and momentarily stilled by awareness of beloved Baba's suffering. He once said, Thank you. As your breath ebbs and flows, but is always with you, so is my suffering always with me. Is not the suffering of the avatar in order that all beings and things may awaken to the realization of their true state? Baba said, this gathering will be unique in the sense that you will witness and share my present universal suffering by being near me as my fortunate companions, being with the Ancient One, who will be at the same time on the human level with you. We did witness his suffering. We were there, and surely we felt it. And perhaps for a moment we understood the cry of the lover of God. I cannot stand the pain of longing for you, beloved, and yet do not take it away, because it is my very life. Sometimes he was certainly stern and almost fierce, and coupled with the sense of his suffering, his presence was like a hammer blow upon our complacency and insensitivity. But of course, he knew precisely our capacity for change and acceptance, and never took us beyond or near the limits of our endurance. We recall that first meeting for all of us on the property which he had named Avatar's Abode. We stood as he was carried in his chair to the platform, and we sat as he gestured for us to do so. There was a pause, which beloved Baba looking at us, and in that timeless moment we were caught and riveted anew in the wondrous beauty, strength and purpose of his face. In retrospect, it felt as though this was the defining moment of his second visit in this part of his world. He had endured the exhausting journey into the southern hemisphere with a body broken in health after 2 car accidents, and by already 38 years of constant crucifixion in absorbing some of the world's karma. Yet, in his compassion and love, he had come to this handful of souls and for Australia. He said to us, I am the ocean of love. Drink deep at that fountain. Love has no limit, but mind is in the way, and mind cannot be annihilated by mind. Only by loving me as I ought to be loved can the mind be destroyed. If you love me with all your heart, you'll be made free eternally. There can be no compromise. One cannot love the world and love God. The man of the world has to compromise, but to have obedience to Baba, one cannot compromise with the ways of the world. Love me and obey me, and you will find me. I am the Ancient One, the one residing in every heart. Therefore, love others, make others happy, serve others, even at discomfort to yourself. This is to love me. Well, at times during those days in June 1958, we sought to entertain our beloved, to ease even for a moment the burden of his suffering and universal work. And now over the succeeding years, we come again in June to strengthen our hands for his work and to joyfully sing and play for his pleasure. And we feel that through the vibrant, potent silence of his presence on his abode, he answers, go on singing through your voices and your hands, and take the blessing which I continually pour upon you through that singing and share it with others. I continually bring the greatest treasure which is possible for man to receive, a treasure which includes all other treasures, which will endure forever, which increases when shared with others. My love, be always ready to receive it. What did we, the Australian Baba family, do over the years to receive this treasure? Yeah, beloved Baba came to Australia twice and spent a little time with us. And yes, he put his hand on each of us so that we would never quite forget, nor ever be quite the same. And each would begin what to the mind is a journey, but to the heart is a gradual, timeless expansion of consciousness. But how were our lives spent? Who is this that we speak of, and what did we do? Of course, the group of men and women who became, in time, the Baba family in Australia, no doubt had many shades of motivation holding them to Baba. But for me, we served. We tried to serve. And we endeavoured to prepare ourselves to serve better. During those wonderful days of the 1970s, when money was even tighter than it is now, we all joyfully came to the abode and worked to clear the land and at least make more presentable the overgrown old pineapple farm the abode used to be. We never thought of payment. We did not ask for whom did the land belong. We did not question why we were doing such work. And we did not feel any possessiveness after completion of the work. If questioned, we said that this land and house is his abode. And remembering the joy, the general joy of those days, I can only say we simply delighted in serving him in any way we could. It was as if the wave of his awakening love in our hearts had washed over the dry sands of our sanskaras. And they were momentarily submerged. It was a honeymoon period in this life, an encouraging glimpse of what we can be during that eternal love affair with the Divine Beloved. We are reminded of Baba's words, remember me. Why? not because I'll solve your problems or change your destiny, but because I will give you the strength to fight the battle of life. Such words give much courage for this holy war. Beloved Baba has said that he will remain with us for 100 years as though he was still in the body. And because we therefore feel his presence, albeit unseen, we tend not to feel the separation. But as he recedes further into himself, we will feel the separation more and more intensely. There will be, then will be the time when people will flock to his abodes, anxious to experience his presence and prepared to worship every grain of soil that his feet have touched. It could be said that the whole world is his home, and in that home are many rooms. They are all his. But some places are more dear to him than others, and those contain more of his presence and perfume. We also took to heart Erich's words as he spoke from the depth of his great love for beloved Baba about gatherings in his name. All that is needed is to just keep his presence at the time you are gathered. You gather not for your own sake, but for him, to love him, to pour out your love for him, to worship him, to adore him, and to devote all your heart feelings to him. Music can be used to entertain him. Let there be stories told about them and readings from printed matter. Above all, bring his personality and his being to your minds and hearts and feel deeply his presence. Jai